This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
I would talk to my mom about it because I was angry with her. I'm like, how could you even procreate with someone like this? What was it about him at the time that made you think that he was even a safe person for you to be around? And she just insisted that he wasn't like that.
Imagine spitting into a tube, sending off your DNA, and unknowingly turning your life upside down. For me and thousands of others, this is our reality. I'm your host, Alexis Auerseld. In July of 2021, I discovered that I am an NPE, someone who has experienced a non-paternal event. In other words, my biological father isn't who I thought he was. This podcast shares the journeys of people who were shocked by a DNA discovery, mostly through modern DNA testing. We're telling the stories of NPEs, adoptees, and donor-conceived people and their families. This is DNA Surprises. Every DNA surprise is unique and layered, and this is especially true for those who have had major shifts in ethnicity. In this week's episode, Robin shares her NPE journey, which began more than a decade ago. Robin was always proud of her Blackness, but when she made her discovery, she not only learned that her dad is not her biological father, but that her biological father is white and racist. She shares how her discovery has affected her sense of self and her relationships. Thank you for sharing your story, Robin.
My name is Robin. I am 36, originally from Georgia. In 2010, I was working in a call center, and a coworker mentioned that 23andMe was offering free ancestry tests to people of African descent. So at the time, I didn't really have a good grasp of like our family history, and I really kind of wanted to surprise my dad with a family tree of some sort. That was my, I guess, impetus for taking the test in the first place. That's why I took it. So I take the test. At the time, it was just mitochondrial DNA, so I only saw my mom's side, and no surprises. It was West African ancestry, and I just kind of was like, okay, fine, whatever. And then 3 years later, in 2013, I was up late one night with my youngest son, my middle child, and he was like 2 months old. I was browsing online. My husband was still at work because he worked late. And I saw an article that referenced 23andMe and issues they were having with the FDA. And I thought, oh yeah, I forgot about that ancestry test I took a couple years ago, and I hadn't logged into my account in a really long time. So I logged back in. And when it came up, the first thing I saw was I guess it's a pie chart, and it had half pink, half blue. So half African ancestry and then half European ancestry. Mm-hmm. That is not who I thought that I was. I am Black. I was raised with a Black mother and father. All of my family that I was aware of and know of are Black. And so far as I knew, I was just a Black woman. And that was a huge shock because basically I learned in one fell swoop that my father was not my biological father. And I also learned that I am technically biracial. So.
Wow. And did you ever have any suspicion that you could have been biracial or that your father was not your biological father?
You know, they always say like hindsight is 2020, right? So growing up, I knew that I looked different from the rest of my family, but we are a family of people who are different shades, different features. Like that wasn't really a red flag for me. And I actually kind of looked a lot like my my paternal grandmother. Anytime people would question me, which was the only time I kind of wondered, like, why is everyone asking me what I am? Why is everybody questioning whether or not I'm actually Black? Why do people, you know, I had people walk up in the grocery store and start speaking Spanish to me. And I'm like, where, like, I would have these moments before I found out throughout my life where I guess everybody else around me knew or had some kind of inkling that there was more to my story. I didn't necessarily know. I didn't necessarily have any idea. Although there was one time in college that sticks out in my mind. I was in line in the cafeteria and there was a basketball player who was biracial who came up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder and he goes, "Hey, you're just like me." And then there was another guy beside him who was also biracial and he looks at him, he goes, "Yeah, she's just like us." And I was like, "I'm not athletic. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have an athletic bone in my body." And so, and he's just looking at me like, "You don't understand what I'm saying." And he goes, "You're mixed like us, right?" And I said, "No. Why would you think that?" And he's looking at me wide-eyed, "Have you looked in the mirror lately?" But I was at this point carrying around pictures of my family in my wallet. So that gives you an idea of how often I was getting this question of, "What are you? What are you? What are you?" And I pulled out pictures of my family and the guy looked at me and said, "Are you sure?"
Wow. Just really questioning. Yeah.
Yes. I said, "The nerve of you, first of all, because you don't know me."
Right.
And, I'm kind of mad. So after I leave the cafeteria, I go on the walk back to my dorm. I call my mom and I was like, "Mama, this just happened. This guy keeps asking me, I keep saying, 'Oh, you're mixed like us. You're mixed like us.' And are you sure that's your family? Are you sure this and that?" And my mom goes, "Well, I don't know what he's talking about, but your dad's your dad and there's no other possibilities." And, she just kind of did away with any doubts I had. And that was it. That was when I was 18, I believe. I think that was my freshman year of college. And so, we're almost 19, 20 years later. But it was 10 years later that I found out. I was 28 when I found out. And I think about that moment a lot because I feel like she could have taken that as her opportunity to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
Instead of finding out the way that I did. Yeah.
Okay. So you find out through the test. What are your initial feelings and reaction? Complete
shock, of course. That's what we all kind of feel, I guess, but disbelief. When my husband came home, he's got a medical background in microbiology, biology major. I had him look at it because even though I kind of already knew just from what I was looking at, I said, "Can you look at the chromosome breakdown, please? Can you look at it? Is there a possibility that, my dad has more European ancestry than we realize?" Like I had all of these, I hope this is not the case kind of things rolling around in my head. And he looks at me and he just says it point blank. He's like, "I'm sorry, but there's no way your dad could be your dad." And him kind of just laying it out there like that, I was crushed. Like I just felt completely crushed. I felt lost. I felt like I had no idea who I was after that for a long time. I'd look in the mirror and it was just like, I don't even know who I'm looking at anymore. I don't recognize this person. I don't know if I can trust myself anymore because how could I miss something so obvious to everyone else? And, me living in my body and living my life, I didn't even figure it out, on my own. I had to be bashed over the head with it through a DNA test. So
yeah,
it was just complete and total devastation, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you decide to do after that? Did you confront your mom?
Oh, yes. I absolutely confronted her. I guess a bit of backstory too with me is my dad primarily raised my sister and I have an older sister who is also not his biological daughter, but he was aware of that. he raised us after my parents divorced, and I would see my mother kind of off and on holiday summers, things like that. My relationship with my mother was always a little rocky to begin with, for other reasons, but this kind of was that thing that it was going to make or break us. I'd had moments of feeling like, I don't know if I can trust her. Can I trust her? And then this happens, and I call her. And of course, I'm furious because I feel like, for one, I shouldn't have had to find out that way. For two, by this time, I had already had 2 children. My first birth was very, very, I guess you could say, like, traumatic in a way. Like, I bled out. She was there. She witnessed all this. She never said a word. Those things were replaying in my mind as I'm asking her, like, why didn't you tell me? You need to tell me. At first, she denied it. Still, she denied it. I hung up the phone with her, and I called my sister, told her everything. My sister's like, and this is kind of awful to say, I guess, but she's like, what do you expect? It's our mom. Like, are you really surprised she lied to you? Like, that was kind of her. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm not surprised. When it was clear to my mom that, like, I wasn't going to speak to her until she came with some serious answers, she finally calls back and says, okay, I'll give you a name. So she gives me his name, and I turned into a private detective, and I got online, and I eventually located him. And to my surprise, he was like, I've been waiting for you to contact me.
Whoa.
And I was like, I'm like, excuse me? You've been waiting for me to contact you? Are you crazy? But that was his response. And he's just like, oh yeah, I've known about you for this amount of time. And the whole thing is quite a huge mess because he was still a part of my mother's life long after my parents were together. So imagine 18 years of my life, they were still in contact with each other. But I had no idea about this person, about this man. It was just a shock all around.
Oh my goodness. So your mom, sounds like she kind of invalidated your initial concern when you raised it to her, and then she gives you a name. Does she provide any other background?
She gave me just enough. She told me, like, the name of his business because he was a business owner, and she told me the name of the business, which helped me actually narrow down how to find him, and I did that. But as far as, like, the details of their relationship and how I came to be, they both gave such different stories. I still to this day am not completely sure who to believe. One says they were in love. The other was like, no, it really wasn't in love. We were just kind of hanging out, having fun. And I don't try to get answers from either one of them anymore.
Yeah.
It's too much to try to do that.
So what did he say?
He said that they knew each other, I think from work. Yeah, from work, and that he was in love with her, which I tend to believe because, frankly, if I do reach out to him, which is not often, he tends to ask about her. Like, that's the go-to is, I would love to see her. How is she? Like, that kind of thing. But he says he told her that she couldn't possibly be pregnant by him because he'd had a vasectomy years prior. Now, my mom says she doesn't remember that him telling her that, but he says that later on when he got married, he actually went to the doctor for a reversal and found out that the vasectomy had partially healed.
Okay.
And in that moment, he claims that he realized, oh no, my mom was telling the truth, and I was most likely his biological child. And he said that he came looking for her. I think I would have been around 2 or 3 at the time. He came looking for her. By this time, she'd already married my dad. Nothing ever came of him looking for her. I think he left a note with her job, something like that. And I'm assuming at that point, they talked about me. He says that he saw pictures of me, but this was all, again, stuff that I was completely unaware of. He said that they would still see each other during this whole time, but I just don't know. I don't know how he knew about me pretty much my entire life. And she was going to see him and showed him pictures of me. And then she would come back home to us and my dad. So the whole thing is kind of sick a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He tells you, I've been waiting for you.
Yeah, that was strange.
What was the rest of the conversation like?
He's a talker, very good with words. So he told me about himself, about, you know, he's older, not significantly older than my mom, but I think he's like at least 10 plus years older or close to it. So he told me about like his childhood, his teenage years, college. He kind of went through a brief summary of his life, told me about himself, his family at the time. He told me about them. We talked about music because we like some of the same kinds of music. And that was pretty much it. Like, he didn't really say, hey, I want to meet you, any of that. It was just, hey, glad you reached out and we'll be in touch. Like, it definitely didn't feel like what you would expect a person who's supposed to be your like biological parent would say. It was more like just an acquaintance you met on the street. And I don't know. It was very weird. Very weird.
Yeah. Did he go on to have other children?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he did. He did. There are technically 2 more biological and 1 that he adopted through marriage.
And do any of them know about you?
They do now because this is the part of the story that's probably very uncomfortable for people to hear. But my biological father, which is the main reason why we don't really speak anymore, and we stopped speaking a long time ago for a while, he's racist. That's not funny. That was trauma laughter, right? But he would post things online and I would see these things and I'm thinking, you know, what is wrong with you, first of all? Just really horrible racist things about Black people. And so one of these particular instances where I called my mom upset and I was like, he's saying all this stuff. He's posting all these horrible things online comparing Black people to monkeys. And I can see these things. He doesn't know that I can, but I can see them. And I called my mom and I'm furious. And I'm like, I just don't understand why him, you know, why would you choose somebody like that? And she just, I guess, thought that it was her way to kind of, I don't know what she was thinking, but in that moment, that day, she decided to message his, well, now ex-wife, and basically told her everything.
Okay.
And she didn't know about me. The kids didn't know about me. And I talked to a couple of them. The youngest in particular, I got to kind of talk through text messages once, and then the other one never responded. And then the one who was adopted by, you know, through marriage, he was really welcoming at first, but then unfortunately a year later, the youngest brother passed away very suddenly. I don't know if just the stress of everything they already had going on in their lives because of their father, and then here I come. They learn about like this big secret that he kept from them because he'd known about me, you know, for a long time.
Since 2013. So when is it that they learned about you?
Oh, this was just 2020. This was only 2 years ago.
Okay. So he kept it a secret for 7 years. And then your mom.
And then my mom was like, fine, you want to be racist? I'm going to tell your family about her. And I'm like, this was your solution? That is not what I wanted you to do. And that's definitely not how I wanted it to come out. In my mind, I always thought like I would handle it myself. I really regret like calling her and venting about how he is and his views, because I don't know if they'll ever have a relationship with me, and I can respect that, but I would have been a good big sister. I really would have. Like, I hate that, you know, none of us really got a chance to know each other, that I really didn't get a chance to know the brother who's no longer here. And all of it is, you know, it's unfair, but such is life.
So his wife ended up divorcing him after that came out?
Well, no, not necessarily because of that. They were already in the process.
Okay.
Like there were already things, a lot of other things going on. I think that was just kind of like, oh, great, there's more.
Mm-hmm. So you grew up with an older sister.
So when my mom and dad met, he actually adopted her when they got married. He had her name changed. That was his way of, she's my daughter. He would always say, like, he saw her, little toddler, and he just thought she was the cutest little thing. And he saw my mom, but like he really, he loved my big sister. And so he would take her to get ice cream, spoil her, and he just really loved her. And that was a big part of, I think, why he married my mom also, because he just wanted to protect my sister. So.
Okay. So speaking of your dad, I was going to say, did you tell him?
I did. And I hope I can get through this part of the story without crying, because this is the hardest part.
And it's okay. If you cry, that's all right. We can pause. Yeah.
But I don't know if I can clearly paint a picture of how close we were. And if you catch me saying were, it's because he's not here anymore. But I did tell him. I found out in November of 2013. I had my son in late September. And so we didn't live in my hometown at the time. And I didn't want to tell him over the phone. I knew I had to tell him in person. So I told my husband, I'm like, we'll go down in January, let him spend some time with the kids. And by this time, my dad remarried when I was like 13. So I did have a stepsister that I grew up with in the house also that we're very close. And then I have older step siblings. So we go home, let my dad and my stepmom spend time with the kids. And when it was just me and my dad in the room, I said, Daddy, I have something I need to tell you. And
this episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit servicenow.com.
Just to paint a picture, my dad was the dad that like sat in the same recliner for like 35 years. Like he's had this one recliner. So he kind of leaned up. He leaned up and he sat on the edge of the recliner because I think he could just sense that something was seriously wrong. And he's like, what's wrong? And I don't think I got like even 3 words out before I started crying. And I told him, that I'd taken a DNA test and it came back that he wasn't my biological father. I just remember his face was kind of frozen in this look of like complete disbelief. Like I could see him trying to process it and didn't scream or yell or cry in front of me, but I could almost see like the light kind of drain out of his eyes. And he got up and he left the house. I don't know what he did. He went for a drive, but I don't know what he did when he was in his car. I don't know if he screamed, cursed, yelled. I'm not sure. But when he came back, he was calm and he just kept saying, I don't want you to be upset. I don't want you to cry. I'll always love you. You'll always be my baby girl, no matter what. Don't worry. Just kind of kept reassuring me that everything was going to be okay. And all he kept saying was, I just don't want you to cry. I don't want you to be hurt. And that's how he was. He didn't want me or my sister to be hurt by some of the things that we experienced growing up. And it was just a really hard moment. I I felt like I had to break his heart. Like I felt like I didn't have a choice. I couldn't lie to him, but I knew that the truth was going to break his heart. So,
yeah. Did he express any thoughts or feelings about what happened? Did he ever talk to your mom?
I can't repeat those words on here. He did talk to my mom. Oh, he talked to her. Oh, oh boy. Yeah, I can't repeat what he said, seriously. But
Yeah.
he did. And afterward, whenever I would visit, he would have these moments where he would just like stare off into space. And he would just randomly say, "Oh, I remember that time so and so came up to me and said, are you sure? Are you sure she's yours?" Or like little strange, like every now and again, somebody would say something that would make him think like, where did that come from? But then he would just kind of brush it off like, "Oh no, she's definitely mine. She looks like my mom. Just brush it off, brush it off, brush it off." And we talked about that a lot. We talked about the little clues along the way for both of us that could have maybe saved us from finding out so late in life. I don't know what that would have done for either of us. It would still have been horrible, but I think both of us kind of felt embarrassed a little and just angry. We both felt like we'd been fooled and tricked. And you have to understand, by this point, my dad was past the point, really. I mean, a man can have children very late in life, but he was really past the point of having any biological children at this point because he'd assumed that I was his biological child my whole entire life. So, knowing he was robbed of that on top of everything, it took me a long time to tell him who the man was that my mom was with at the same time. And he didn't really know. He kept kind of trying to figure out who was this person, what were they like, and he never could register like had he known the person or anything like that, which was a good thing. I mean, he was furious with my mom, furious with my mom's family, just a lot of anger. My dad was not the same after that. He wasn't the same. Not when it came to me or the kids or my sister or anything like that, but I definitely saw him kind of fall into a bit of a depression. And he would often tell me that he had nightmares about it. And in all of my 30 some odd years of knowing my dad, he never told me about having nightmares. This was like, he was a Marine. He was like a big, that kind of, I'm a big macho man. He was that kind of like guy. And when he told me he was having nightmares, I didn't even know what to say.
Wow.
There was a bit of a bond, at least by the fact that we had both been hurt by this choice my mom made. And I do think it helped us kind of open up a little bit more with each other.
Based on what you said, there's no relationship with your biological father. Is that correct?
Pretty much. Like I could email him and be like, "Hey, how you doing?" I could email and say, "How are you? How are your kids?" or something like that. And he would answer. But as far as like a functional relationship, absolutely not. And I don't want one. So
has he owned up to his racist views?
Oh, no. Absolutely not. He actually got really angry with me that I told my mom that I didn't want to deal with him because of that I didn't feel safe ever introducing my children to him because of that. And argue with me about whether or not he actually was racist or held racist views. And, at one point early on when we started talking, and I think I was kind of describing my experience in my body, in my skin, looking the way that I look and how there were moments throughout my life. I was kind of trying to explain my point of view to him, what it's been like for me growing up, in the Black community and sometimes being questioned about my identity. And there was a moment where I was like, I love being a Black woman. I'm proud to be a Black woman. Like, I don't have any issue with my Blackness. And his response was, "Why would anyone ever think you were Black? Why would you call yourself a Black woman?"
Wow.
And I was ready to fight him. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. I was so mad. I was just so like, I've known you for all of 2.5 seconds, and you have the nerve to tell me that I don't have the right to identify the way that I identify simply because now you're in the picture. Like, that made no sense to me.
Yeah. How has this affected your identity?
Oh gosh, do we have another hour and a half? No, I I don't know if I can even really put into words how this has affected my identity. I have absolutely had an identity crisis. That is 100% for sure. I have been to therapy multiple times. I'm currently in therapy once again because of my identity issues. And it really doesn't stem from the fact that, oh, I feel like I'm no longer a Black woman. I don't feel that way. I just want to make sure that I am not perpetuating any more lies, if that makes sense. I don't want to be dishonest with people if they do ask, well, what's your background? What's your ethnicity? To just say, I'm Black, knowing that I have a white biological parent doesn't seem 100% honest. And I know people will make the argument that if you have one drop of Black blood in you, like that whole thing, the whole one drop thing, that's kind of gone out the window for a lot of people. And I just feel like it's more honest for me to say, well, in short, I was not raised with any of my biological father's family or my biological father, so I identify as a Black woman. However, my biological father is white, so I am half and half. I hope that answers your question, person who has no business asking me that in the first place. But that's kind of how it feels. Like I have to give this little brief, like, my family is dysfunctional. Are you ready to hear my story? Here you go. And that's what
I mean, I identify so much, like, just to validate what you're saying, because I've also grown up being asked, what I am, my whole life. And I think your situation is very interesting because you were raised, like your experience, your lived experience is as a Black woman.
Right.
And up until pretty recently, 2/3 or more of your life, as far as you know, your dad was Black and your mom was Black.
Right.
So, but I understand too the nuances and that you don't want to, quote, claim something that isn't 100% true.
Right.
But, and then, so much of it depends on what other people's experiences of you are. So there's probably some people that look at you and say, that's a Black woman. Mm-hmm. And then there's other people, particularly biracial people, who will say that's a biracial woman, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
There's so many layers to it. Yeah. Do you have any interest in learning more from anyone else on your biological father's side? Have there been any other connections?
Unfortunately, no. I'm not against connecting with anyone. I mean, him, I am probably going to avoid just because you get burned so many times. You're just like, nah, I don't have time for that. But I'm not necessarily like anti my biological father's side of the family. I definitely would hope one day that I could at least get to know my half brothers, but I'm not going to force myself on anyone. I know from talking to my biological father about his family history that his own story is kind of broken and dysfunctional, and that there's a whole side of his family that he doesn't talk to. So I think the chances of like that actually happening are very slim. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that. Like my life is full enough. I think that I will be okay if those connections don't ever happen. But there are times when I feel like, we've all been robbed. Like it definitely feels that way. Like we were all robbed of the chance to have maybe a little more love, maybe a little more kindness in our lives if we would have known each other. So.
Yeah. How are things currently with your mom?
Ooh. Our relationship is probably the best it's ever been. I can honestly say that. We have had some knockdown, drag out fights over this and other things that have happened between us. But I think that against a lot of the advice that I was given to cut her off, I worked through my feelings towards her. I chose to forgive her. I do still have moments where I'm like, I don't feel like I got the complete story and I'm frustrated by that. But all in all, I've just tried to not block her from my life completely, because I understand too, like a lot of who she is as a person comes from her upbringing. And so I try to have grace, I guess, when it comes to all of that, and just let her know, if she crosses a line, that's unacceptable. I'm not going to put up with it. Before all this happened, I was very much one to just kind of take it. If she said something I didn't like, I would just take it and keep my mouth shut. And I'm not like that anymore. This whole experience, I won't say it's made me like a meaner person, but I think I'm much more willing to like use my voice and say, you know what, all of y'all cut the crap, stop lying to me. I'm not going to take it anymore. And I'm much more apt to just say, I don't have time for games. I don't have time for people who are not going to shoot straight with me. I've had enough of my life lived being lied to, and I don't have time for it anymore. So I think that's a big part of it too. So yes, as far as my mom, we're in a good place. But another part of this is I am not the same person I was, not even close.
Yeah. Yeah. How else do you feel like you've changed?
Oh, wow. I think that I am not as trusting. My dad would always tease me about my rose-colored glasses. I would just generally assume the best about everyone and assume that nobody meant me any harm, which in a way is probably a good thing, but it also set me up to be hurt quite a lot. And I think after this, I'm more cautious, not to the point where I like withhold love or kindness from people, but I'm definitely more alert. And I'm paying closer attention to what people are saying and doing. And I'm not giving, fourth and fifth and sixth chances like I used to.
How has it affected your relationship with your husband and your children?
Oh boy, this is the part that's really hard. It's very difficult to go through something like this while you're in a relationship. And I think even harder while you're a parent, because I didn't grow up in an environment where I always felt like I could like freely express myself. It was just kind of a given that like on either side of the family, you didn't ask questions. You didn't ask the adults questions about anything pertaining to like your family history or why people acted the way they did. Like there was just a lot of secrets anyway before this. Trying to raise my kids in an environment where that's not the case, while also kind of unpacking all of this and what it means for my identity, and trying not to be irritable all the time, trying not to be angry, trying not to lash out on days when I just feel completely lost. It's hard. And I think that honestly, laughter has saved me more than anything. My kids are really funny. At one of the most difficult points in all of this, around the time I lost my dad, as he passed away a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, my oldest son, I could see him staring at me in the rearview mirror, and he just kept staring and staring. I'm catching him looking, and I'm like, what in the world? Why does he keep looking at me weird? And finally I say, why are you looking at me like that? Is everything okay? And he goes, why are you white? And I was like, excuse me? He goes, we're all brown, but you're white. Why are you white? It's like, so I actually told him the truth. I was like, so here's the case. Here's what actually happened. And that is why my complexion is a little lighter, because this thing happened and this is a part of who I am and also a part of who you are. And it's been kind of like a running joke in my family ever since. Like, I do stand out. But once again, the lightest person in the room in my family.
Yeah, right. So you're almost a decade into this, nine years.
Yes.
What are some things besides your children being funny, kids are the best, that have helped you heal and process?
Oh, definitely therapy. The therapist that I see now has been phenomenal with just helping me hold on to the parts of myself that I never should have doubted to begin with. She's really kind of helped me go back in time and understand, like, this thing did not change the core of why you loved who you were back then. Like, it didn't change the fact that you're proud to be Black and you're proud of your father and the lessons he taught. My friends, like, they have been so supportive, and my sister, extremely supportive. I think just having people around me who could reassure me, like, you might not know who you are, but we do, and we love you. Like, that was kind of that feeling of, we know you and we love you, even if you're still a little lost. Like, we're here. It got me through. I think the fact that I had a family when I found out, I think that really helped. I think they gave me a reason to get up out of bed for a long time.
Where would you say you are at this point in your journey?
I am at the point of not being anybody's dirty little secret anymore. That's where I'm at. That's actually why I decided to submit my story, because I realized I've been living most of my life, like, aware, well, not most of my life, but the last almost 10 years now of my life with this secret that only the people who are closest to me knew. And I felt like, even though this is such a huge part of my story, I can't tell people. I can't risk people knowing this secret, because I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want people to criticize, people that I love. I don't know. I just had all these mixed feelings about how the world might fall apart if people knew, when it was really just, it was just fear of what I don't know, fear of the unknown. I'm not sure, but it's my story and I'm going to tell it. Nobody can stop me from doing that. That's my right. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell parts to, like, hurt people or anything, even with my biological father, because I know people might listen to this and be like, geez, you trashed him. No, but I think I have the right to call out the things that he did do that were hurtful and, just not right. As a human being, things that he shouldn't have said and done, as well as my mom, the lying for both of them, and then the comments that he made about Black people. And
yeah, well, it's just facts. It's the facts.
yeah, it is. It's just facts. You can't. It is what it is, and I'm gonna say it. And if someone has a problem with it, I'm sorry for them, but I'm not gonna hide anymore.
What advice would you offer a parent who is keeping a DNA surprise from their child?
Oh my goodness! Please don't do that. You just don't know the devastation you could cause. I mean, I know that there are some situations that are more difficult than others. If there's, like, consensual situations, those I think are most difficult. But I do hope that anybody would tell the truth, simply because your child deserves to know the truth. You don't want something to happen down the line where they're just completely devastated and blindsided, and then you're having to grapple with how that changes their relationship with you, because maybe now they don't trust you. Maybe the love that you had and the trust and the bond that you had is broken because of the lie you told, if you just withhold that. So it's never worth it, I don't think. Maybe some people would say that they wish they never would have found out. I don't feel that way. I just think it's best to be honest with the people you love, no matter how hard it is, because things have a way of coming to the light.
Yes.
Be it medical history, be it the possibility that they might, like, date their half brother in high school or something crazy. Like, you just don't want to take those chances. And let's be honest, a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people, they withhold the truth to protect themselves. And I think, at least in my mother's case, that was part of the issue, was she just didn't want to deal with the fallout. And I don't think that's fair. Own up to what happened. You owe that much to your children and the people, involved. So,
yeah. What advice would you offer someone who just discovered that they're an NPE?
Oh boy, I have absolutely no idea. I guess allow yourself to feel everything. Feel angry, feel sad, feel confused, feel whatever. If you can find a room to go and get a bat and break some glass in it, do that. Have people around you who genuinely love you and are willing to listen to you if you're able to. And I hope everyone one day will be able to find a therapist. I think it helps to have somebody not connected to you sometimes too, to kind of help you process. But just surround yourself with things that bring you comfort and love. If it's music, if it's movies, if it's going for a run, like don't stop doing those things, because it really helps to kind of have those bits of joy coming into your life every day, or else you could really kind of fall into a dark hole. Because I think we've had those dark hole moments where you just wake up and you don't want to get out of bed, and it's rough, you know.
Well, Robin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing your story. You've been going through it for a lot longer, I think, than most people. So I really appreciate you providing some context for your journey and explaining where you started and where you are now. And I hope that you find peace and continue to heal.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again to Robin for sharing her story. If you have a DNA surprise story that you'd like to share, please email dnasurprises@gmail.com. And if you haven't yet, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Until next time.